Hello, happy Monday. It is so exciting to be able to hop on live every Monday afternoon, evening for some of you that are on the East Coast, and just say hi and hang out and get to talk a little bit about marketing. So, if you haven't met me before, I'm Amanda Warfield. I am a simplicity focused content marketing strategist and copywriter. I am the host of the Chasing Simple podcast. I'm also the author of the book Chasing Simple Marketing, a real actual book. I will never get over that. Um, and I also just am so passionate about helping course creators and educators, especially, get off the marketing hamster wheel and simplify their marketing so that they can make the most impact in the smallest amount of time for themselves. Because realistically, if you're an educator, you're not only most likely serving clients and creating products and creating educational offers, but you're also trying to market your business and get yourself out there and get visible and practice your educational skills, right? Because for a lot of us in the education space, especially, our marketing goes hand in hand with practicing our education as well. And so it's a great two for one, but at the same time, it does still get overwhelming. So my goal is to help you make it as effortless as possible. That's not to say it will be effortless because that's just not how marketing works, but to make it as effortless as possible so you can make the biggest impact in the smallest amount of time. So today we're going to chat about building a content engine. So when it comes to a marketing strategy, I've talked about this in a couple of videos already. When it comes to a marketing strategy, every marketing strategy should have two parts to it. So you have your nurture strategy and you also have your growth strategy. Now, your nurture strategy is what you're doing. It's typically your content strategy, right? It's what you're doing to nurture the people that are already in your audience. And your growth strategy is what you're doing to bring in new people to your audience. But what can happen a lot of times is we get so caught up in that nurture strategy that we don't have time for the growth strategy, right? We don't have time to go be on podcast and speak at things and be part of summits and bundles and do webinar. We don't have time for the growth marketing because we get so caught up in the nurture marketing, that content strategy. So, what a content engine does is it allows us to cycle through some of that content that we're creating with our nurture strategy so that we don't have to constantly be creating new content, new nurture content, right? We don't have to constantly be creating that new content and be stuck on that content creation hamster wheel, which no one wants to be on, right? So, if you are looking at your nurture strategy, you're looking at your content strategy, the entirety of your nurture strategy should be your content engine. And the engine is essentially what makes your nurture strategy run and realistically what makes your marketing as a whole run. Because what you'll do is as you go out to these different growth strategies that you're working on, as you go out and perform these different growth marketing strategies, you then send people into that engine and then they're being nurtured while you are able to focus more so on the growth marketing and less on the nurture marketing without ghosting your people, because that's what we don't want to do, right? We want to make sure that we're not on that content creation hamster wheel, but we're also not ghosting our audience at the same time. So for those of you that are joining live, if you have any questions at any point, please drop them in the chat or just say hi. I'm really glad you're here. And for everyone that is watching the replay, same goes. Say hi, leave your questions in the comments, and I'll come back to them. So that's a basic overview of what the purpose of a content engine is and how it works within the overall marketing strategy of your business, right? It's part of your nurture strategy, and you take that your growth strategies and you fill them into the nurture strategies so that they can then into that engine. Once they're in the engine, I don't really know how engines work. I'm gonna be really honest with you. This metaphor, analogy, whatever you want to call it, makes sense in my brain. Hopefully it'll make sense in yours too, because I don't know anything about engines. But once your people get in your engine, they're cycled through the entire engine. I don't know. It makes sense in my brain. Anyways, so once they get into the engine, then you've got all of this content in different areas that they can find, they may or may not find, but it's there for them. So, what I mean by that is for a content engine, you realistically want three parts of your content strategy. You want your long form content, you want your short form content, and then you want your email newsletters. Now, when it comes to your long form content, that typically is a podcast, YouTube, or blog posts. You may be thinking, that sounds great. I'm a solopreneur. I don't have time to create YouTube every week, or to create a podcast every week, or to write a blog post every week. To which I want to say, you don't have to do it every week to be consistent. But also, realistically, I'm such a fan of knowing your limits and knowing what you truly can and cannot handle. So if you know that you truly cannot handle creating a blog or YouTube video or podcast, and you know that once a month is just even that's not realistic. Okay, so realistically, let's focus on your email marketing being your long form content and try to keep up with that. If that is going to be your long form content, though, I really would suggest at least every other week, if not every week. You can work your way up to it and start it every other week, but you want to be able to make sure you're staying top of mind with your people, and social media is just not going to cut it for you for that. So, with that content engine, I guess you've got that long form, which is probably YouTube blog or podcast, but maybe it's your email marketing. Then you've got your email marketing, or maybe that's your long form. And then you've also got your short form marketing. This is social media. Basically, choose one social media platform. And if you're struggling with staying consistent, I would choose one type of content within that one platform. So, for example, with Instagram, you've got reels, you've got lives, you've got feed posts, you've got stories. You've got 4 different ways that you can show up on Instagram at minimum. So choose one to start with, and then you can add on later. But maybe you really love creating graphics, and carousel posts are how you're going to show up, and you're just going to do a bunch of carousel posts and reshare them to your stories. Maybe you really like stories, and you're just going to have a static grid, and it has all the information you need, and you just say, okay, great, I'm going to show up on stories. And if you go look at my page, here's information to know that, yeah, I'm still active. I just don't post to the feed. There's all kinds of different ways that you can do that, right? So you'll choose one. Then you've got all the components of your content engine, and you want to put them together. So by doing that, you want to make sure that you have all of the pieces working together cohesively, because if your engine's not working together, the car is not going to work, or the tractor, or whatever you want the engine to be in. I don't know. Again, we're not getting too deep with this metaphor, but you've got to have all the pieces, and they've got to work cohesively. What I mean by that is that you have to make sure that you are taking your long form content, whether that is blog, podcast, YouTube, or email. You're taking that and you're repurposing it into these other pieces. So you want to take your long form content and you want to then create it, and you're going to take it and you're going to repurpose it into an email if the email is not your long form content. And then you're going to repurpose it into 5 social media posts. Maybe you're going to repurpose it into 2 emails. Maybe you're going to repurpose it into, that's generally my rule of thumb, is generally 2 emails and then 5 social media posts. But that way, you're not spending hours and hours and hours writing all of these blogs, recording all of these podcasts and all of these YouTubes, and then also writing all of these emails, and then also creating all of these social media posts. Instead, you're able to take what you've already created once and just tweak it a little bit for each place. And it can literally be as simple as copy paste. For example, for a really long time, what I did with my podcast, I'm still doing the podcast, but that was my main type of long form content. I decided to do YouTube just because I wanted to be able to interact and say hi. So if you're here, say hi. But I took my introduction to every YouTube video, or not YouTube video, to every podcast episode. I literally copy and pasted that introduction into an email. I took away the begin, like I took away the you're listening to episode whatever, all of those things. But I made sure that I wrote a great introduction. I wrote one great thing one time. And then I was able to copy paste that into an email, and I was able to just tweak it a little bit, maybe add a little more to it, and then add the link to the podcast episode to encourage people to go listen to it. So, someone who maybe hasn't found my podcast yet, but has joined my email list by some other freebie, well, they're able to think, oh, she's got a podcast as well. Let me go listen to it. And then they may download the podcast, follow it, subscribe, whatever the new Apple term is, because they change it all the time. They're able to then say, oh, I'm going to go listen to this. And so I was able to send people from the email back to the podcast. Also, from the podcast, I'm able to say, go download this freebie, go check out this product I have, go whatever. And that gets people on my email list, whether they're opting into a freebie or they buy something from my shop. They're able to go, oh, well, now I'm on her email list, and now I'm getting not only the information about the podcast each week, and I can decide whether or not I want to listen. I'm also occasionally getting tips and tricks. I'm getting news about sales, all of those things, right? And so I'm staying in the know by being on the email list. And so the podcast sends people to the email list. So you can literally copy paste. When it comes to repurposing, you can take the main points, hey, here's what happens in this piece of content, go watch, listen, read. Or you can take main points. So let's say you've got, in this, I've got the 3 parts of a content engine, right? Long form, short form, and email newsletters. I could create 3 different emails based off of each of those things, and just an email out what long form content is, an email about what email marketing is and how to use it, so on and so forth. And so you can take chunks of your main points essentially and write that information up for an email. Same goes for social media posts. That's what I tend to do for social media posts. You can take that main chunk and then all of your main points, and that should get you around 5 different social media posts that you can. Padme, everyone. Would you like to join us? If you've listened to the Chasing Simple podcast, you've probably heard her screaming in the background. So this is what she actually looks like for those of you that have heard. Say hi, Padme. This is one of my little coworkers. This is the neediest one. All right, so where was I? Oh, taking the main points and breaking them into social media posts as well. And then the same goes with the social media post. And you can take those main points and you can A, send them back to the long form content, B, send them to an opt-in to then get them on your email list, right? Or C, add engagement calls to actions to encourage people to engage with you so you show up in their feed more. So you can take one piece of content, spread it out through all of your different parts of your nurture marketing strategy, and also be sending people back to the different parts of the engine as well. So they're not just going straight through it. It's a cycle. Hey, you're going from long form to social media. Hi, Octavia. I'm so glad to see you. So you're going from long form content to, oh, don't forget to follow me on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or wherever, or X, or wherever you're showing up, right? And then they go check out your social media, and then they follow you on social media, and you share about an opt-in, and they go to the email list, or they start in your email list and they follow you. Your welcome sequence says, hey, follow me on this place. And so they follow you there, and then they learn about your long form content. You see how it kind of flows, and you use all of your platforms to send people to all of the platforms using the same content that you used with the long form content. Hopefully that makes sense. So your content engine, that's what it is. And as you create your content, hopefully you're batching your content once a month. And so you're able to just create that content for the next month. And then you've got 3 weeks to work on your growth marketing strategies, focusing on those things. And then as you're focusing on those and you're sending people back from the growth into the nurture strategy, they're moving through your content engine and they're beginning to know, like, and trust you. They are growing how much they trust you. They're growing how much they listen to what you're doing, or they decide that you're not a good fit. And that's okay too, because we want people to say, yes, I'm all in, or no, I don't care what you have to say. We don't want people that sit on the fence in our marketing and in our audience. So you use those growth strategies, you work on them for 3 weeks, you send them into that content engine, and then people flow through the content engine without you having to focus on it for 3 weeks out of the month. And you just focus on the growth strategy so that you can send people into that content engine. So that is how you build a content engine. A quick side note, or one last tip, I guess I should say. Actually, let me do a call for final questions. So, any final questions from those of you that are live? Now is a great time to ask them. And then, yeah, one last final tip while I wait to see if any come in. A great way to move people from whatever your growth strategies are into that nurture funnel is either have a piece of long form content in mind that you're going to send people to. So if you have a piece of long form content that performed really well, that you've gotten great feedback on, that is like a core pillar of your business, that's a great piece of content to say, hey, now that you watched this webinar, you viewed this summit presentation, you downloaded this thing that I put in a bundle, so on and so forth. There are different strategies that work best for different growth strategies and different calls to actions that work best for different growth strategies. But in general, as you're getting started, especially with those growth marketing strategies, a really great thing that you can do, especially if you're doing like guest blog posting or something like that, or you're just doing, hi Rihanna, especially if you're just doing like lives on Instagram with people and you're collaborating that way with growth strategies. A really great thing to have in your back pocket is one or two pieces of core content, pillar content, you might say, to drive people back to. So if you have a blog post or a YouTube video or a podcast episode that people have loved, that you've gotten a ton of listens or downloads or watches, like it's something that people are really interested in, that's a great thing to send people to because it gets them inside of that content engine. And the other thing is a freebie as well. Any freebie you have that you've created that leads to an offer, because again, we want to make sure that we're leading people to offers so that we're eventually leading them to sales, which I talk about in another episode about the purpose of marketing and the sales precipice. But another episode, another podcast, another video. I don't think I'll ever get over the podcasting mindset. It doesn't help that I'm still podcasting. But I've been podcasting for, gosh, since 2019 now. So 5 years of just podcasting. So I'm probably going to call these all episodes. Anyways, but having a freebie that leads to your sales, having a couple of core pieces of content that you can lead people to get them inside of that content engine from those growth things, that's a great way to easily move them in. And it's a really great low pressure way, especially if you have the ability to link to it. So that's just one bonus pro tip. All right, and it doesn't look like we've got any questions at all. So if you think of any later, if you're watching this live and you think of some later, feel free to drop them in the comments here. Send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at Mrs. Amanda Warfield if you don't already follow me. And for everyone else that's watching the replay, drop your questions in the comments, and I'll come back to them later. And I hope that you guys have a really great week. Next week, I'll be here same time, and we're going to be talking about, what are we going to be talking about? I already know. Let's see. Finding time for marketing. So that's going to be a fun one. All right. I'll see you next week, friends.